that package to prospective and prospective behavioral specialists that we were advertising for. There'll be no budgetary impact this year. Those positions are in federal funds.
So move.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is I would request approval of the revised substitute teacher pay schedule. There was the school committee has already approved this teacher pay schedule. However, there was one category or area that we discovered afterward needed adjustment. Mr. Hicks, if you can just give us a brief explanation of what the revision is.
Sure. So the pay schedule that we have currently in place has proved very successful. It's helped us retain many of our substitutes. The only group that we're having issues with are those that are certified in the specific content area. So what we are requesting is that those who are certified in teaching in a content area that they're certified in, that after 45 days, when they're considered a long-term substitute, that they bump up in the pay scale to $200 per day. So it's a step in between the base of $150 per day and after reaching the $135 where they would be certified and on the salary schedule. So essentially the only people that will be impacted, very few, are those who are teaching in a content area in which they're certified, and it wouldn't go into place until after 45 days.
So move.
Any questions? And Mr. Hicks, that's pretty competitive with the surrounding communities.
It is, and unfortunately, we actually lost a substitute today in this specific situation. So the timing of it, I mean, we really need to step up our game.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is I'm just updating the committee on the facility and equity fund projects. You may recall that last spring the state announced the initiation of a facility and equity fund pool of money for capital improvements of various school districts. There were 9 school districts, if I believe, that were approved, North Providence being one of them. So North Providence is eligible for up to $5 million for the school building authority. And the good news is the reimbursement rate on these projects would be at 90% reimbursement. So that is a tremendous opportunity for us. So we have met with our building principals and Mr. Ferroli, and also obviously the central office team and Studio Jade to help identify the needs that we think could qualify for this $5 million fund. So I've enclosed in your packet the 5 applications that we have submitted to RIDE. They are listed in order of priority. The first is a comprehensive multi-million-dollar renovation of the high school auditorium to bring it into a 21st century performing arts auditorium used by the school also and by the community. So the estimate there is about $3 million, a little bit over that. Another application is to continue and accelerate the modernization of the media center that we are in now. As you can see, we've been adding furniture and have a lot of plans for it. So there's an application to accelerate that and also to renovate the bathrooms, the student bathrooms here in the high school. And as far as the middle schools, we have 2 plans. One would be to replace the floor in both of the cafeterias, which is not in good shape at all, but also to renovate the gymnasiums, particularly by adding and then replacing also bleachers in the gymnasiums. As you know, both of the gyms at Ritchie Middle School and Birchwood are used extensively by the school and the community. So our applications total up to $5 million. We might get approved for all of the projects, or we might just get approved for 2 or 3 of the projects. We're not exactly sure, but we were advised to submit up to $5 million, and there's a good chance that we might get them all. And as I said, at a 90% reimbursement rate. So the goal for us would be to relieve the construction bond. As you know, $125 million has been approved for the 3 elementary schools, the administration offices, but also projects at the 2 middle schools and the high school. And these 5 applications would have been things that we would have wanted to cover in the construction bond. So if we can use this money at a 90% reimbursement rate and remove $5 million of potential projects, that leaves more money to relieve the bond for other projects or to not spend it at all, whatever the decision of the building committee would be. So I just wanted to update the committee and the public on that. And as you can see, we're dedicating any capital dollars that become available to us, obviously to the secondary level at the middle school and the high school, seeing that in 3 to 4 short years, we'll have 5 brand new elementary schools. So that's my update. The next item on the agenda, I will turn the podium over to Mrs. Seitzinger. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Does
sorry.
anybody have any questions on item D? I just have one question. We would have to put the money up front and then get the reimbursement, and those dollars would come from.
Yeah, Ms. Castanelli's not here, so
Yeah.
I will respond based on what I know, and I will let her know. And if she needs to correct me, she can send out an email to the committee tomorrow. She's ill, but yes. So it would work that we would put the money up front. It's similar to the bond. We would put the money up front, but then the state would reimburse us directly, and it would be up to 90% reimbursement rate.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, the next item is Mrs. Seitzinger, and she's going to give the committee an analysis of the RICAS data. Just a brief overview. I have communicated to the committee on this. We did see some pockets of improvement, but as we expected coming out of COVID, we're not necessarily where we would like to be, and there are areas of concern. We looked at, ironically, Mrs. Seitzinger and I, especially today even, we looked at our state testing data across the board pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And the district was really moving in an extremely positive direction. And all of our schools were showing growth for the most part. And then obviously, like most public schools, we were set back by the pandemic. So the latest data does show some pockets of growth, as Mrs. Seitzinger will show you, particularly at Birchwood Middle School, Greystone Elementary School, Centerdale Elementary School, Ritchie as well. Even the high school, which is not part of RICAS, they met many of the targets in the PSAT and the SAT that they didn't hit last year, but then missed an MLL target. So as Mrs. Seitzinger will show you, there are pockets of improvement in the areas that we know we have to address. It's continually special needs, special education, but also a new one that has emerged is the MLL population, which has shown up as a subgroup that is in need of additional support. And we've already taken steps in those areas. But at this point, we just wanted to give you an overview of the data.
Oh, yeah, but which one is it? Okay. Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent Goho, Chairperson Pallotta, and members of the school committee. Nice to see everyone this evening. Sorry, I'm a little congested, so bear with me. As Mr. Goho said, it's there are definitely pockets of improvement, which was challenging after the last several years, as everyone knows that we've been through in terms of COVID. So in looking at some of this data, I wanted to compare not just last year, but look at 2019, because what our goal is to get to pre-pandemic data and higher and keep doing that. And I believe, and we believe, based on our high quality curriculum, the interventions and supports we have in place, all the things that we're doing in terms of instructional practices, that we will get there. It will just take time. So Mrs. Van Avery is going to help me with the presentation and just in terms of the slides. And I will share this presentation with you electronically. I just wanted to make sure I updated some things just recently. So just for the results, and I did share these also in my update recently with all of you, and so did Superintendent Goho. In terms of the state results versus our results, North Providence versus the state and ELA for RICAS, 35% were meeting or exceeding, and in math we were 23%. So a little slightly higher than the state, and then with math a little slightly lower than the state for this year. And then this is by grade level, again for this year. Again, if you're looking at the state results versus our results. So again, as Superintendent Goho said, we had some pockets of improvements in terms of the middle schools, showing some growth compared to the state. And again, some of those were matching some of their pre-pandemic data levels. So, that obviously is our goal. certainly with our high quality curriculum in math at the elementary level now, ELA for the secondary level, and also math at the secondary level for the high school this year. We're excited about those future outcomes in terms of achievement. And this is by school, so again, just for this year, and I will show you comparatively over the last few years. Looking at the state again, being at 31% for ELA and 27% for math, you can see where, you know, certain schools like Greystone, for example, Sunnydale was about the same. Birchwood and Ritchie again, definitely higher. And then again on the math side, Greystone and Birchwood and Ritchie being significantly higher than the state average. So you can click on that, Cindy. So I just wanted to use this presentation, and this was something that the state kind of gave us when they, oh, is that not going? It's not going. Oh, why is it not going to that? Anthony, I might need your assistance. So this, what I wanted to show you was if we look at, I don't know if it's going to open it. Oh, that's strange. Okay. I wanted to show, I'll go back to this another time and I can explain to it. It just shows over the last several years from 2019, which was pre-pandemic, until this year. What I can say is that, as Superintendent Goho said, pretty much our data aligned from last year. Some pockets, some improvements, as you saw at the different schools, but pretty much the same. But our goal is going to be overall to get back to where we needed to be. Anthony, can you just help with this possibly? But we'll try to get back to that in a minute. So if we go to the next slide for now. So now we're going to look at the subgroups. So the first subgroup is special education students. So the state was, for special needs, 5% for ELA. North Providence was 3%. And then in math, we were also 3%. So obviously, we know this is an area of need. Our most vulnerable students are our MLL students and our special needs students. We believe that, again, with the work and the alignment that we've done with our curriculum, the resources and supports we put in place, the exposure to the curriculum these students are getting, the interventions that we're providing, and the staff that we're providing, I think that we're going to see some changes with this population in the next several years. And we also, later on in the slides that I'm presenting, we'll talk about some of the work that we've done. The next one is our economically disadvantaged. And again, slightly higher for ELA for North Providence, and in math, slightly higher as well. And then the access data results. For newcomers, that means these students have been in our district less than a year. This would be 18% versus a state of 9%. Developing, in terms of access testing, there's entering, there's emerging, and developing. So these students are probably been here. They could be like over a year, 2 years or so, or beyond. Developing is 32% versus the state of 28%. And then the long term, meaning they've been here a few years in our district, 28% versus 19%, and that's the access testing. And then the next one is on RICAS. Did you have a question? Yep.
The students with disabilities graph.
Yep.
This one. So I just want a clarification. So 245 students with disabilities across the grade levels, and we have 0 that met expectations?
I know.
I know it says that we have definitely less than 10 because there's no one on that radar out of 245.
No, it's actually saying at the very, very bottom of your slide
You can
that
see,
our number is so small that it can't tell you. Right?
Right, so it's
3%
out of 245 students, the number of students is less than 10.
No, it's data suppressed because
I wanted to make sure I didn't miss that.
Yep. Can you see that on the screen? And I know that copy's hard to see. Do you see what we're saying, Mrs. Picard? Okay. Yeah. Okay, you want to go further? Sorry. I'm on the RICAS data by English learners right there. So this is a little more promising. The students, as far as English learners in ELA, students that have exited, first of all, the state for ELA is 4%. We were 6%. And then for the exited students, state was 29%. Our exited students are 53%. So that means that those students have reached English proficiency and they've exited the program. They are monitored by the district for 2 years, and then they're monitored by the state for 4 years. And then in math, it was 6% for the state, 4% for our district, and then 33% versus 23% for those exited students in math. Okay. And then this is race and ethnicity. Obviously, we're working on those disparities in terms of these subgroups in both ELA and math. We recognize that there are some disparities and discrepancies and differences for these subgroups versus our general population, and those are that will be continued to be worked on in all areas. So I think we can skip math. And then gender is another subgroup. Again, compared to the state for ELA, a little slightly higher for females, and males was about the same. And then in math, slightly lower actually, but in terms of statistically about the same as the state. And then the homeless subgroup for us, for ELA versus the state, we were at 33% versus 13, and then 11% versus 9 in math. Yeah, that's okay. And then the next slide is our Rhode Island Science Assessment results. And again, pretty negligible in terms of results. It's pretty similar to what we had last year. And even if you go back to 2019, fifth grade went down slightly this year. And I do believe, based on the fact that we have Amplify Science, which is an incredibly rigorous, high-quality curriculum for science instruction, I think that we'll see some great results in the coming years. And we're definitely seeing those improvements already at the middle school level. So the next slide is by school, just looking at the differences. And again, I summarized them at the top. So you can see the results there by school level. So we had, again, some pockets of really great growth in terms of Greystone. The middle schools did about the same, high school about the same as well. And then this is broken down into subgroups. I'm not sure how much time you want me to spend on these, but you can see just basically in terms of, again, all the subgroups, they're listed there in terms of achievement for the science. And the science, we know there's a lot of work to be done there. We are working on a curriculum using Amplify and working on that alignment K to 12. I'm going to skip those. And then we go into PSAT and SAT data. You can go next. You can keep going. So in terms of, I'm going to go to the next slide because I think it's a little easier to read. If you look at the PSAT 10 data, so you can look at the last several years, it's pretty, in terms of the English reading and writing portion, it's 65%. Last year it was about the same. In 2020 it was 66, so about the same. And then for the math piece, 28% this year versus 36 last year, and then 38. So hoping that the Reveal math curriculum and the work that we're doing at the high school, along with the interventions that we've implemented, resources we're using, will support that effort. And the next one is SATs. So again, looking at the chart, it's a little easier to read that way. You can look at the math, was 29% this year versus 25 last year. And then in English reading and writing, it was 48% this year versus 50 last year. So, some growth, but pretty much the same. So this is the response from the high school in terms of what we're trying to do to improve achievement. The Rhode Island Read to Read Act, the awareness training was completed last year for all of our secondary teachers and support staff. So that should support literacy instruction in terms of understanding of the components of reading and the science of reading instruction. And we have implemented ALEX for grade 9, which is an intervention for math. We also implemented method prep for grades 10 and 11, specifically focusing again on that test prep for SAT and PSAT there, but mainly for SAT. Algebra workshop classes are taking place. There's advanced pathways in math. I already mentioned the Reveal math curriculum being implemented. and increasing time in the heart of algebra because they see that as a high need there. And for the ELA portion of the high school, we're implementing the high quality curriculum as well for ELA. They're implementing a vocabulary program in grade 9 literacy skills, and they're also offering some classes which will continue to include reduced self-contained ELA to allow for more inclusion classes and balance the number of IEP students in each class. And they're also continuing to use what they have already in place, which is IXL, Common Tasks, and Lexia. And reading specialists are implementing a special ed type of pull-out model on a case-by-case basis, meaning they're pulling out students individually as needed. That's not the entire goal, and that's not their entire model, but they do as needed. And then smaller class sizes with the increased caseload for ELA teachers. And so the next slide, a lot of this are things that we have been doing and have been ongoing in terms of reviewing and analyzing our student data at all levels as a district and also as schools, and creating action plans, which our schools are doing right now, and we've done in terms of district in terms of looking at our data. We're drilling down, we have drilled down to the student level to understand the areas of need, including specific content and skill areas. Of course, we're reviewing the released items, the practice items, but the most important thing is that our curriculum is aligned to the standards, and we shouldn't have to practice RICAS released items, because if our curriculum is aligned and then we're embedding what we need to embed, but doing the work that we're doing every day in terms of best practices and using that curriculum with fidelity, we should see improvements in achievement. Of course, we're examining our current curriculum across ELA and math and science, doing crosswalks with the Rhode Island curriculum framework, and building in those components, including units, tasks, and performance assessments. We're continuing to align our curriculum K-12. We're continuing to look at best practices, whether it's Hattie, Marzano, and other people, and examining really some just basic practices. For example, I recently gave the principals a PLC question. Just focus on what are we learning, what is our goal for our students? What do we want them to learn? What do we expect them to learn? What do we do if they don't learn that? What do we do if they do learn that? Do our students understand the purpose of their learning and how they can achieve what they need to achieve in terms of criteria? And then continuing to align and coordinate professional development for our principals and teachers. I mentioned this later, but our leadership team is actually going through the AIM pathway literacy leadership training right now for the Right to Read Act, and working really hard on, to be good role models of that literacy leadership. And then just continuing to gain that commitment by faculty and our leadership team to what we need to do instructionally and best practices in that culture of excellence. So the next one, we are right now, currently, we have proficiency training happening with our pre-K to 2 teachers, our reading teachers, MLL teachers, special ed teachers. Our awareness training is happening with specialists this year, and also, as I mentioned, the literacy training for our leadership team. We're continuing to improve our teaching and our students' learning through reflective dialogue and practice, including learning walks across our district K-12 in ELA and math. And that's been really, really enlightening, and I think really supportive, that our teachers feel that they're not being judged, but we're trying to understand how can we better support them so that they can improve their practice and we can improve our students' learning. And then continue professional development at the middle school and elementary level to support new curriculum implementation, as I've mentioned earlier, with reading and math. And then blended learning is still happening in collaboration among colleagues, where we have grade level meetings at the elementary level, we have content meetings at the middle school level, and that's really supportive in terms of teachers teaching each other and using the expertise from within. That's very powerful. We're continuing professional development, as I said, at the elementary and middle school level. In those areas, we have universal screenings continuing at the elementary and secondary levels to support, again, using that data to drive instruction as only one of the assessments that we use. And then we're continuing our elementary high-quality curriculum, our Foundations Phonics program for grades K to 2, Achieve 3000 in grades 6 through 8, and reading, and all of which is having an impact on achievement. And then now we have a math interventionist, as you know, at the elementary level, who's already doing a tremendous job in terms of coaching, interventions. I actually observed her teaching a lesson on problem solving in a first grade classroom, which was excellent. And also our middle school math interventionist doing a great job. And then we also have ELA coaches internally from the district for elementary, and also as we have outside partnerships that are working with us as coaches in ELA and math. So we're continuing our LEAP district support program with the focus on high quality curriculum and our specialized programs for special education students, and that's going very well. Last year was, really our leadership team worked very heavily with Proving Ground from Harvard and RIDE, and this year we're just doing check-ins. We have things that we have to make sure we're doing in terms of the grant, and that also includes the learning walks, which we are doing in conjunction with our regular learning walks, looking at co-teaching, looking at SEL, looking at our mathematical practices in grades 3 through 5, and our inclusionary model. So that's going very well. And then continued partnerships with Highlander, True North, New England Base Camp, Bradley, NRU, all supporting those best practices, school improvement, and SEL. And then the Lexia program is continuing, especially for our most vulnerable students, as I've mentioned before. Next one. Oh, did you want to add?
Spot on.
Did I miss anything? I feel like I'm on my brain is just, and then again, added in more of, this is continuation. These weren't added in. We had Alex Bridges Math and PALS Math programs, which is elementary. Again, all evidence-based, research-based, doing very well with that and continuing that this year. We're continuing elementary academies in math and ELA, fall and spring, and then we'll continue our summer academies, K to 12. We'd like to try to get an MLL academy. If we don't get the MLL academy, we've integrated those students. They are welcome to come to the academies, which we have been doing in the last couple of years. And so we are still tracking those students who were in the academy from last summer. We're tracking that data to make sure we see continued improvements across the board for those students. I mentioned that we're continuing our work on our curriculum in terms of the scope and sequence, the frameworks. This is exciting about MLL because, as Superintendent Goho said, some of the areas that showed a need of improvement were for our MLL students in terms of our accountability. We've worked really hard, and I noted that when I came here, we had 4.5 teachers and a part-time MLL coordinator. We now have 9 people total. So that includes 8 MLL specialists and 1 full-time coordinator. We're really proud of that. Of course, we've increased our student population of MLL students. So we feel that we're responding very well to that need. We have an excellent team of specialists and coordinator. And we're also we already invested in an interpretation service, which is going very well. So anybody can contact this service, use an account number, and you could get a live person for any language to help you interpret or help with a family. So that's been critical. That's great. And we're also using another program, which will probably be rolled out in January, Elevations platform, and also Imagine Learning. So those are 2 things that will help our teachers, both general ed and all of our teachers, our specialists, to help our students and families. So we're super excited about that as well. What else do I say? Continued professional development, of course, for our MLL teachers. And again, with our special educators and our MLL teachers, we're making sure that they're exposed to and they get the training that everybody else does so that they understand the resources that are available for students, how to support our students, and do what's best for those most vulnerable students. So we're continuing professional development in special education. We're aligning special ed and general ed professional learning, and Ms. Van Avery and I have worked really hard on that to make sure that it's equitable and that it's supportive of their needs. Family Engagement Committee is continuing. And then finally, the Ruler program, which we've explained before, and our district SEL coordinator, that's going very well, and she's doing a tremendous job with that program as well. And next year, we'll be implementing the program. That's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, before the school committee gets into some questions, I just want to add just some high-level points. So what happened in North Providence sort of mirrors what happened across Rhode Island and really across the nation. As I mentioned, if you look at our scores in 2019,
Yes.
there was a lot to be excited about. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And so, we know we've seen the research that it's going to take 3 to 5 years for recovery to get back to those points. But the federal dollars, we're using them to accelerate that timeline, hopefully. If you look at the data, we didn't have steep drops,
No.
which is a good thing. Obviously, the proficiency rates are not what we want them to be, but we didn't see steep drops across the board. What you did see is the colored area that grew was the yellow area.
Yes.
And so that's the good news. So the
Yeah.
red area in most of the categories is small, and that would be
Yes.
the kids,
Yeah.
the lowest track.
Correct.
If you look at the yellow area, that's the kids. Those are the kids that are just below proficiency, almost there.
Yes. Correct.
So to me, that's the promising sign,
It is.
because that's not necessarily a heavy lift. Also, this is the first year, pandemic aside, that we have K through 12 now, brand new green lighted curricula in place across the board.
That is
And
correct.
so just that process alone usually takes 2 to 3 years
At
to
least.
embed. And so when you combine that, with the learning recovery estimated timeline, and of course where we did see the decline, and we've seen this nationally, is in the areas and the subgroups where the students were already the most vulnerable,
Correct.
which is special education and MLL.
Correct.
So in special ed, the committee is aware of a lot of things that we're doing. When Ms. Van Avery took over, we had 70 some odd kids out of district. Right now, today, we're at 48, and we're in the process of building 2 K through 5 classrooms. That's over the next year or two going to lower that number, hopefully in the mid 20s, high 20s, low 30s. So the goal is to bring back more of our special needs kids,
Mm-hmm.
to have them learn in our
Environment,
school
yeah.
system, in
Mhm.
our teachers, and in our curriculum. Because in the area of special ed, really all it takes is a small group of kids to move those proficiency rates. But we obviously want to hit every single special needs kid in every subgroup.
Mhm.
You also mentioned MLL, as Ms. Seisinger said. Those numbers are exploding. The numbers that we ended the school year with and then started the school year with nearly doubled in some schools.
Correct.
And you see trends like that over a 10-year period, not over a 3-month period.
Mhm.
So we had 4.5 MLL teachers in the district. Now we're up to 9. We've used the federal funds to hire additional MLL teachers. We have to find a way to embed them into the budget going forward to keep those supports in place. We've tried to make sure that we have provided yearly training to all of our regular ed teachers, so it's not just left on the MLL specialists.
Yes.
We have kids integrated in our general ed classes that have second language deficiencies, and so it's really important that our general ed teachers be trained on the strategies that are successful for MLL kids. So we've done that yearly at every single school. One of the other things that we've prioritized is that when we've hired new teachers, every single building principal has recommended candidates to us for hiring to have a degree in or in a program or in an expertise in MLL. So just this last school year, I know we hired like maybe 10 elementary teachers, and I'm sure that 8 of them that we ended up hiring all had a degree or were in a program, and that is what distinguished them from other candidates. So we are making it a priority to hire more MLL specialists, but also to make sure that we're hiring generalists that have the MLL background. Excuse me. As you've seen from Ms. Seitzinger, this is a very comprehensive program. There are a ton of supports in place between the budget that the school committee is allocated and then the use of the federal funds. There is an array of resources in place, and as I said, that's going to take time. Sometimes it can become so dizzying that there are too many supports in place, but that can't ever be a bad thing. But what I've really told the principals is, for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be that complicated, in the sense that what should be happening is really simple. Review the data with your teams, identify the gaps for each student, and then make sure that there is I don't want to say a return, but make sure that there is rigorous instruction going on in every single classroom. And just by that, identifying the gaps and making sure that every single day in every single classroom there is rigorous instruction. And when I say return, I mean recovering from the COVID classrooms, where our classrooms go back to being more collaborative, hands-on, engaging, and interactive, because that's when the best rigorous instruction can take place. And that was really not possible during COVID because of virtual learning or distance learning or distance within the classroom, where kids had to sit individually at their own desks and be spaced apart from each other. So I think this, with all of the supports in place by your team and Miss Van Avery, and then the learning walks, but just simply reviewing the data and building principles, making sure that teachers get feedback to return our classrooms to be more engaging and collaborative and application based. And I think that we'll see things move.
I definitely agree. And I think that your point about the partially proficient students is really important, because hopefully those students with the supports we have in place and the academies and all the things we're doing, they will be bumped up. And that's our goal. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention about the ELL piece, I think, as you said, all the supports we have in place, we have a great team of people. It's going to happen. It's just, we have to give ourselves some time. But I also want to mention that we do have some regular teachers in our district who are now ELL certified, who took it upon themselves. There was some reimbursement from the union, so thank you for that in terms of contract.
Just remind the
Yes.
committee, and with the help of the union, we were
Yeah.
able to increase the course reimbursement for
Yes.
MLL.
And a couple of people, one person I know at least, I think there's two actually that are fully certified now, and there's continued interest in that. We just sent, we have a partnership with Roger Williams, and we just sent that information out again, so we'll get more interest. And they've also, many people have taken the WIDA classes that are available, so that helps them to understand the practices for MLL students. And the other piece I wanted to mention is not only the training, as Superintendent Go has said, every year the MLL team or the person at that school, along with the support of the team, does the training. They do a fantastic job. And they also created a Google Classroom full of resources, because a lot of it is just best practices. You know, I think the challenge this year has been, as you said, a lot of newcomers. And we're not the only district experiencing that, as you said. So we're learning, and we're making sure that we're adapting and supporting those students and families in the right way. Yes.
Questions? No. Mrs. Picard?
So I just want to go over some of the highlights that I think that are important to note. The middle schools, I have to say, since I've been here, I don't know if they've ever outpaced. And I think our middle school teams need a huge shout out, because overall, the scores that I see in middle school, they're getting right back on track to pre-pandemic status, and they're exceeding expectations. I'm very, very happy with Bertrand and Richie's teams. I can't say enough about what we're seeing here. Not an easy task, especially as we all know, middle school age is one of the hardest ages, so kudos to those teams. High school, pretty much same thing, back on track. Their SAT math is higher than it was pre-pandemic. Yes. So I think we have to note the fact that there are some celebrations that can't go unnoticed. We all recognize that there's areas of improvement, but there's good work happening, and it's going to continue to happen. So I really want to shout out the high school as well. I also would like to note Centerdale, science, better than pre-pandemic, huge increase, and Greystone.
Greystone, yes.
So huge for those teams as well. Science has not been something that we've seen grow quickly, and to get it higher than pre-pandemic, not an easy task, so kudos to them. Overall, there's definitely bright spots. We all know, like Joe said, it'll take 3 to 5 years. What I want to be thinking about, and you had mentioned, Louise, you said you're hoping to get the MLL Academy if we get it.
If I can get people to teach it.
I was like,
that's the key. But the good news is those students will be included. They have been included. So I just want to make,
But if you can, the issue is the staff, not necessarily funding.
No.
Okay.
No.
And the other thing I wanted to know is, I know you mentioned the partnerships.
Yes.
I have a couple of concerns that some of the partnerships that I currently saw, the data is actually a lot less proficient than we see here in the district. So I'm curious about the correlation to the selection of the partnerships based on their correlation of their data. So, and that doesn't have to be a conversation now.
Yeah.
I just think we need to be thinking about.
Yeah. What I would say, though, to that point is Highlander, who worked with Greystone and Centerdale the last few years, their scores have been high, especially Greystone. And they're the two schools that were recognized for achieving during the pandemic. So what I can say is, out of the schools, and now Highlander is working again with our other 3 elementary schools on design, innovation, school improvement, looking at that data like we're talking about, drilling down, and just working on best practices. So yes, I would say that there was a direct impact in terms of Highlander working with Centerdale and Greystone. I can't speak to the other 3 schools right now because I'm hoping to see the same result. But it's a good point.
What I would, I mean, with our school improvement templates that are coming in, we're going to
Yes.
have that funding
Yep.
piece. So I think what will be crucial for us to review is the way the funding impacts the return on investment, and are we seeing it? Is it the direct impact on the instruction with the teachers that they're working with? So I'm definitely curious to keep an eye on that,
Yes.
so that we can coordinate that.
Mhm.
And I know you've mentioned Lexia, all the different supports. The MTSS, are you utilizing the Power School opportunities for the RTI?
She can speak to that.
We will be.
Coming down the pipe.
Yes.
'Cause I
Yeah.
think that's going to help you track your data so that you can actually be more targeted. Because you have a lot of things, like Joe said, there's a lot of things happening. So the more targeted I think the team can get, I think the faster the acceleration. But kudos to the team. I understand it's not easy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited
Thank
about
you.
that.
Thank you, Mrs. Picard. Any other questions or comments? I just have a few general comments. We are still considered an urban ring community.
Yes, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I think if the state
Yeah, it's not suburban, it's urban ring.
The partnerships that we have
Mhm.
with the different vendors, are
Yes.
those multi-year partnerships?
Yes. Well, currently yearly. That's a year, like just for this year, and then I renew it, and I renew a contract with them.
So they just go from year to year?
Correct.
Okay. And part of that partnership is certain teachers are trained, and then those teachers train
Yes,
our
they're
teachers and our
trained as
teachers?
coaches, and then they work in terms of, like I said, doing the learning walks with them right now. They're looking at data with them. They're teaching them best practices. They're modeling lessons. They're coaching, and they are trained people. Yes, correct. And they're very well received. I think they're very, their approach is very friendly, very professional, very supportive.
Okay, thank you. And is the demographic relatively the same between McGuire and Stephen only?
It might be slightly different. I'd have to look into that directly.
Because those percentage points just kind of
It's huge, huge
came
difference.
out to me
Yeah.
between those 2 schools.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that directly for you, but I can. But as I said, and Mrs. Picard alluded to, I think that the changes that we've had in terms of our practices, our curriculum, I think our leadership team is working really hard at the elementary level and middle school and high school level to really drill down to that data, as Superintendent Goho said. And I really think that is the key. I think the schools that improved, especially, I'm just going to highlight Greystone for now because that comes to my mind. I think the reason that they've had such improvements is that they really worked on their data, and Centerdale too. Under Principal Hanley's leadership, they drilled down to the data. They included more inclusive practices for special needs students, made sure those practices were happening in the classroom to reduce those gaps. It has to be strategic and systemic, and I do believe the leaders that we have in place understand that, and that is their goal. And that we've already received some of the action plans for broadcast. They're very targeted and very specific.
The other thing that stood out to me was the 5th grade scores, and then how those scores went dramatically up in 6, 7, 8.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure what that means, but
there's many variables. Okay. I think that we'd have to look at the cohort specifically. And Mrs. Picard, you did get my data right about the ELA points. So it was interesting to look at that growth because there is growth. But what you saw in that report was there was more significant growth at the middle school level. So as Mrs. Picard pointed out, and Mr. Goho, it's just interesting because there are so many variables. I do believe that, again, remember, they're teaching one content area. They have time to collaborate, plan, to really focus in on that data, and they do an excellent job with that. We still have content meetings, so the ELA team gets together across the district, ELA teachers, social studies, science, math, and they are really I would say, systems driven. They are really people that dive into their data, look at the released items, look at how their students performed, and then make adjustments and make improvements. So I think that focus makes a big difference. I think for me to speculate what exactly that is, it'd be hard to say. I think there's too many variables, to make that judgment. But I think that
No, I'm not asking you to
No,
speculate,
yeah.
but I know that you're probably focused in on that, and you probably see the difference.
I
if we
do.
saw the difference.
We do.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you for this very comprehensive report. It was
you.
very well received, and it seems to me that you're focusing in on the targeted areas, and hope all things continue to go well.
Thank you.
One thing I just want to add too, the point about the middle schools is very unusual to see improvements in middle schools. Not only with the pandemic data, but the pre-pandemic data, the middle schools were the black hole nationally. So in North Providence, that's not happening, which is a good thing. That's a tribute, as Mrs. Picard said, to the staffs at the middle schools. But I'll also add, with the contract that we negotiated, we put content leaders into the contract. And I thank, again, Mr. Cicerone and his team for helping us do that. And I think we have team leaders, but we also now have content leaders to oversee the content and review the data and work in a more academic way. So I think that probably has and will contribute to it. But thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice job. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
One thing I would like to mention, in our consent agenda, we recognized and approved, we approved 4 retirements. And I'd just like to recognize them tonight. So Joan Reddy, grade 2 teacher, Stephen Only School, retiring at the end of the school year. Madonna Charlin Thompson, English teacher at North Providence High School, retiring at the end of the school year. And Francis Marshall, grade 3 teacher at Stephen Only, also retiring at the end of the school year. And Lori Batek, who is here with us tonight, art teacher at Birchwood Middle School, also retiring. I'd like to recognize them all. But Lori, while you're here, thank you for your years of outstanding service. And Lori, you can bring back the good news about the middle schools and how they received great kudos tonight. So share that with your colleagues tomorrow. We do.
So, Laurie, what are you going to do with all your spare time now? Thank you for your service. Item number 9, we have no school committee reports. We have no old business, new business. Mr. Goho?
Yes, I would request a motion to approve the enclosed MOA of the Rhode Island Department of Education for the 21st Century Technology and Furniture Fund, which grants North Providence, I think it's approximately $247,000. I've met with the high school and the middle school administration, as well as Mr. Nahiji and his tech team. And when we approve this MOA, we will move forward with purchasing interactive computers like the ones that you see in front of you tonight for this meeting, only the newer versions. And we're going to begin phasing them into our classrooms. So I would request a motion to approve the MOA.
So move.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So next item on the agenda, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Attorney Scungio. I will request a motion to approve the new cannabis policy, which is in your packet. And again, the committee has the right for a first read, or as you have been doing, and I think it would be appropriate, an immediate approval. We should have had a policy technically in place by December, so we're not that far behind. But there's been a lot of moving pieces and changes and interpretations, so that's what's kind of delayed it. But I just want Attorney Scungio to just give an overview of why we need to have the policy. There's a lot of confusion out there in terms of cannabis being legal. So why do we need a policy? It's not legal on school grounds or is smoking. Connection to federal funds. This has nothing to do with smoking and vaping and nicotine and all that. We do have a separate policy for that by federal law, state statute, town ordinance, and school department policy. There is no smoking, no vaping allowed in schools or at school events or on school grounds. Enforcement definitely is the issue with that, but we already have that policy in place, and it was recently updated. This is a totally new policy regarding the new legalization of cannabis in Rhode Island. Attorney Scungio.
So first of all, this is not, even though it's called a cannabis policy, it's not about the use of recreational pot in any sense in school or anywhere else. There are 18, excuse me, 18 students across the state, none of which that I'm aware of in Rhode Island, because I think it would have come, in North Providence, I think it would have come to my attention through your office. But there are 18 students across the state that can use medical marijuana based on some medical condition that they have, and their doctor has prescribed it for that. So in reaction to that, and probably the growing number of students that will be receiving this medical marijuana, just like any other prescription medication, the Department of Health put together a set of regulations for the use of it in school, because sometimes, given the prescription, students have to use medical marijuana during school time. So through their regulations, they now require all cities and towns to have a policy for the use of it. And what the policy does is it provides a framework for nurses and school districts to deal with the administration of medically prescribed marijuana. And that's simply it.
Okay, so I would request a motion for passage of the policy.
Motion made, and its effectiveness tomorrow.
Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12, approval of bills.
Motion to approve.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Speaking. Okay, thank you. Questions on the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Use of property.
Second.
Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have no requests to address the committee. We have no pending business. Before we adjourn, I just want to compliment the administration on their hard work in securing the opportunity for the grants and fulfilling the applications. As you know, and Mr. Goho alluded to it, that obviously the bond has passed for the 3 new schools and the improvements in the high schools and the middle schools. And as Mr. Goho mentioned, with the acquisition of these grants, if we get approved, we'll take a lot of pressure off the $125 million bond regarding the 3 schools and the improvements in the other schools by applying this grant money to improvements in the high school and the middle school. So I just want to thank you and your team for pursuing these applications, and hopefully they'll be approved and we can continue to move forward. And I just want to again thank Mrs. Seitzinger and Mr. Goho and their team regarding the very challenging aspect of trying to continue to move forward post-pandemic. We know that has not been easy. We hope we continue to stay on the right path. It seems that we are continuing to stay on the right path. And just on behalf of the committee, we just want to thank you for that, because we know it's a lot of hard work. It's not easy work, and we thank you for that. Outside of that, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, and Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.